Great. So I'm very pleased this morning. This semester, we have several presentation focused on the arts, and this is one focused on the visual arts. I'm delighted to have Linda Friedlander, who is a good friend of mine from Yale and who has been now for some years doing programs at the British Art Museum, really trying to take the art into the community, but including the very broad community, including the neurodivergent community. So I'm about to turn this over to Linda, and I thank her very much for giving this talk. And I'm delighted to have her this morning. Thank you. Linda, go for it. I'm going to shut myself off so the bird doesn't go crazy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fred. And thank you for the invitation. And it's a pleasure to be here with those of you this morning. I'm Linda Friedlander. I have worked at the Yale Center for British Art for about 27 years. Started in the capacity as the head of the education department, and for many years, and have now senior educator for engagement. Part of my position always involved trying to make the museum a safe and welcoming place for all people, and have the population of neurodivergent visitors has been brought to the center in bits and pieces ever since the American Disabilities Act was passed in 1990. And it's just taken a long time for public spaces to bring their spaces up to the level where they can accommodate a more divergent and diverse population. And what I want to talk about today is a particular program that we started with Chapel Haven, now Chapel Haven Schleifer Center. That's been going on for 14 years. And what it has meant to those of us who work in both places, Chapel Haven and the Yale Center for British Art, but most importantly for the visitors that we bring in and how we've been able to craft programs. The other important thing is that we, myself, the head of education, the art director rather at Chapel Haven, Tina Manchetti, who has been my collaborator ever since, we're on the same page in terms of what we could do for students and how we could get them out of their small local community of the residential school that Chapel Haven is. For adults from ages of around 30 all the way up to 75, 80 years old. Many of the students there are residents, some are day students, and Chapel Haven, if you're not familiar, does have a variety of levels of accommodation of different abilities of their residents. So this is the backside of the museum. The Yale Center for British Art is located on the corner of Chapel Street and High Street. It is a mere 2 miles from Chapel Haven, which makes it an easy commute for them to get to us. There was a day when I was walking around the galleries and I bumped into Tina Manchetti, who had brought one of her art groups in. Tina runs the art program and has a wide menu of opportunities for her students to take part in art and art making. So there is the Out to Art program, visiting the museum. There are painting classes, ceramic classes, modeling, clay classes, silk screening, all kinds of hands-on programs like that. And Tina has also expanded her program to the performative arts, a bit of dance, but in particular acting, which the students love, and they put on a show at least once a year for the folks at Chapel Haven Schleifer Center, but also at the general community at large. So just for some people to whom this might not be have a particular awareness of what these words mean, what do we mean by neurodivergent? It's the concept of neurodiversity affirms the natural variation in cognitive development across all humans, and that atypical or neurodivergent neurological development is a normal human difference that should be, one, respected in the same way that we respect other differences among individuals, and two, viewed as a natural result of the vibrant and complex human brain. The concept of neurodiversity encourages the acknowledgement of a broad understanding of cognitive diversity and focuses on strengths and abilities and not just areas of struggle for individuals. Here is a view on the left of the campus of Chapel Haven. It looks like any other kind of perhaps urban setting, and even any other kind of perhaps campuses that we may see all around us. To the other side, sorry, is the logo of Chapel Haven. Very recently, in the last few years, the Schleifer family, who has a son that has been at Chapel Haven for, I think 30 years now, made a significant contribution to enlarge the campus so that Chapel Haven can increase the number of applications and take more people on. And the perimeter of Chapel Haven is a series of homes that Chapel Haven has acquired, and they've retrofitted them into apartment places where some residents live, new ones live in dormitory type settings, but the idea is to get them to then graduate to living in an apartment setting on their own that are overseen by Chapel Haven with a counselor assigned to each of these individual homes. This is one of the groups from Chapel Haven, from our Art to Art program. Tina Manchetti is, Tina Manchetti is here, kneeling, holding a very long brush so that Andrew here can be helped to hold it and make some coloring marks on this very large mural that this group happens to be working on. Tina and I decided that because the importance of learning is often based on repetition, especially for neurodivergent individuals, that they come weekly during the academic year. So students come every week. Their visits are for 2 hours, and they usually are held at the museum itself. Sometimes there are classes at Chapel Haven, and during COVID, we did virtual classes, so we didn't skip a beat. The program itself is led by myself, by Tina, by other museum staff, and by the museum's group of volunteer docents who are an incredibly important part of this collaboration. They apply the staffing in order to give much more individualized attention to the Chapel Haven visitors, and provide the extra help and the extra support when needed. When students come, we have a small kind of team meeting in a classroom to talk about what we're going to do that day, the theme of the day, followed up by a no-fail hands-on art activity. And one of the overriding important goals of this program are developing self skills. So a definition, self-determination is acting as the primary causal agent in one's life and making choices and decisions regarding one's quality of life, free from undue external influence or interference. And Weimeyer had updated the definition about 10 years later that self-determined behaviors are volitional actions that enable one to act as the primary causal agent in one's life and to maintain or improve one's quality of life. And it has been determined by research over the years that students with higher levels of self-determination have better post-school outcomes overall, have a higher quality of life, have a more positive image and self-esteem, and have better outcomes generally in most parts of their life. Self-realization, self-awareness, self-knowledge are some of the ideas, attitudes, behaviors that we help to develop amongst our visitors in terms of themselves and their self-determination. When we design our programs in the museum, we try to provide opportunities for the students to increase their choice-making skills. We're always offering them choices and make them determine what they want to do. We are also giving opportunities for decision-making skills. When they are working on a piece of art, it's up to them to make the decision about what it's going to look like, how big or small it's going to be, what are the colors that they're going to use, what are the shapes, the lines, how space is going to be used. We present questions that require problem-solving skills. So when we are talking in front of an object in the galleries, they need to really learn to look carefully. And we present certain problems about perhaps the making of the object and see what they themselves can come up with. And also ideas like becoming more independent, learning how to take risks amongst themselves when they're in the galleries discussing a piece of art. Now, not to be misled that the only people that benefit to the museum are these students themselves, but it broadens all of our senses of community and belonging. It gives the staff at the British Art Center a better understanding of the diversity of the human experience. Caring about this audience makes everybody who works at the museum prioritize diversity in all its form and at all phases of planning. When we learn to design educational experiences for neurodivergent visitors, we actually are designing for everyone, for all visitors, and we become better educators for it. It also helps visitors to the museum who view our Chapel Haven students actively engaged with discussing works of art. They always tend to stop when they walk by our groups, listen, and leave with big smiles on their faces. We've worked very hard to make the museum a warm, positive, safe space so that these individuals want to come every week and enjoy themselves being here. This is a picture of a group of staff and people, visitors from Chapel Haven. We've also made it part of our curriculum to have them visit spaces in the museum outside the galleries. So we go to curatorial offices and meet them. We go to public relations people. We go to communications people. We go to the education offices. And one of the departments that we focus on here is the installation department. Taking the visitors up to show them that some work was being done on the building and that the regulations within the museum is that anybody goes to this area, and you had to be a very special visitor to go to that area. You had to wear a hard hat because it was a workspace, and you also had to wear these neon light reflecting vests so that everybody would be well seen and we could keep track of everybody. I think the biggest thrill for the visitors was getting into this oversized freight elevator instead of the small, more individualized elevators, and take the ride to the place where they were going. A group studying intensely, it looks like. We are in the entrance court of the museum, and on the left side of the screen is a very large lead outdoor piece of sculpture on a base, sometimes known as a plinth. We always spend a bit of time at the beginning reminding these visitors and all of our visitors how important it is to look at something. And how do we look at something very carefully? Well, first of all, we spend an extended amount of time looking at it. Very soon in this presentation, they would pick up their stools and move a couple of feet, and then move another couple of feet until we got them to traverse all the way around the sculpture, because part of the lesson had to do with the difference between three-dimensional objects, which are objects that you can actually walk all the way around them in space, compared to flat two-dimensional objects such as paintings or watercolors or drawings, which just are up on the wall and you cannot get behind them. You cannot see the sides of them. By the way, if anyone, well, okay, Eileen, I know Fred had said we'll answer questions at the end, but if there's something about the particular image that strikes you, please just give a shout out if that's okay with Eileen. A group here, this was a very special trip that this group took. We went to a place in New Haven from the British Art Center called Next Haven, which was it's called an incubator for upcoming painters and curators, and people apply and people get accepted. This is for artists all over the world, for people desiring to be curators, and they come and they live at Next Haven. They get their own studio. They there's also an exhibition space in this particular building. It was created by the Dean of Architecture at Yale. There was an old building near Hill House High School in New Haven that was an industrial building, and they completely changed the interior of it. The money was given by a local artist by the name of Titus Kafar, who also had two of his particular patrons donate money to build this. And it was meant to be located. Yale had its sight on it and thought that they wanted to get it on campus, but Titus really wanted it embedded within the New Haven community, so that it would feel more a part of the New Haven community as opposed to the university. The gentleman who is third from the left, his name is Joe Guzman. He is an artist from Texas and has been living at Chapel Haven. I met him at a museum gathering, and he told me his story. He was working at Next Haven for a year, but was under contract to the Sean Kelly Gallery in New York, a real blue chip gallery. And I talked to him and told him about this particular program, Chapel Haven, and he said, why don't you bring them down to my gallery? Great guy. So took the van, went over to Chapel Haven. His gallery was something to behold. It was filled with paints and brushes and paints and brushes and canvases and paints and brushes. And I am sure that our visitors had never been in that kind of an environment. And he demonstrated his tools, and he had blank canvases that he painted on while he was with them, gave them an opportunity to touch his tools and his tubes of paint, etc. Again, going to another place outside of their home, so to speak, at Chapel Haven, which really broadened their opportunities and their layers of experience. So we really got to be very, very hands-on in terms of our Chapel Haven students. So here we are back at the British Art Center, and what installation wanted to do was to show them, to teach them how they take a piece of sculpture and put it into a gallery, and then at the end, when we are done with the art, and it happened to be a borrowed piece of art, how it was crated up and then taken down to the back of the museum where the delivery area is, and where it is put on a van and then driven to the airport, because we explained how museums, we loan things to other museums loan things to us. And we have to have a way of getting them back and forth. So the piece of art was something that was created by the installation department. It is this portrait bust here, and we've looked at actual portrait busts and talked about them. But obviously we wouldn't use a real work of art and explain that to them. And it is sitting on a plinth, and then to protect it, we put this this acrylic, and it's called a bonnet, on top of it. And you put on a pair of gloves, and you use this big suction cup, and someone on the other side has another one, so that you can easily lift it straight up and put it then down on the floor very carefully. And then you remove the bust, which is here, and end up putting it in a wooden crate that is lined with foam rubber to protect it. All of these things are lessons that I think you can see the reactions of people engaged, looking at it and having a great time being a museum installer. Another example of what we do with our Chapel Haven visitors. So this was a lesson in Tudor costumes, Tudor being the period of the 16th century into the 1500s into the early 1600s. And there we are in a classroom in the museum, and we can see photographs on the back wall of this is a photograph of a painting that we have, another photograph of a painting, but we were looking at the costumes, these very stiff lace costumes, and comparing it to this painting to this painting, which maybe there were 40 years apart. And the costume changed in that all the aristocrats wore these same kind of costumes, but the stiff collars suddenly became very soft collars that laid on the shoulders. We borrowed a costume from the Yale Repertory Theater, an Elizabethan collar here, named after Queen Elizabeth. And again, I'm not telling you anything that the students did not hear from us. So they were able to touch it and feel the difference. And then one of our docents who was teaching the class that day had this brilliant idea of using coffee filters for the cuffs and the collars, where you just kind of spread them apart, and it looked like some of the lace collars that were worn on the real deal. So here they were dressing up and posing. This is a section of the museum. It's known as the Long Gallery. And after Chapel Haven had been coming to the museum for 10 years. Actually, it was 12 years because we had to tack on 2 years of COVID. And when COVID was over, I got permission. And for anybody that's listening who would like to replicate this kind of a program, having administrative buy-in is critical to moving forward with what one can do with neurodivergent audiences. And I told her that I wanted to have an exhibition of objects that the students from Chapel Haven could select on their own, and they would have to then give reasons for why they wanted that particular painting in the show that we were going to have for them. At the opposite end of this long gallery is a smaller exhibition space, and that is where the objects were hung. I videographed the whole process, which took a good year to do, and condensed, as we always hear, 7 to 8 hours of film to 8 minutes, and then I made that clip even shorter to 4 minutes, which I'd like to share with you today. So you can actually hear the words and the voices of the students themselves and perhaps get a sense of their excitement for how the amount of responsibility that they were given by the museum, the confidence that the museum had in their abilities to make a presentation, and something that would be worthy of having visitors to come and see. So I'd like to do that now. Eileen, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Do you have, because I've got something in the way here, I want to put on the I'm looking how to put on the
You
little.
have to screen share. Sorry. Eileen has to make her, Eileen,
Yeah,
you have to
Eileen, do you
enable-
have the screen? The Yale Center for British.
I don't know what you are looking to
Okay,
do.
that's it.
Can you make, there you go.
There we go. Whoop, 12 years ago. Wait, what happened?
Try again, try again. It's always a nuisance with Zoom. Click on the play button at the bottom.
I'm looking, I don't see a play button.
I don't know if you can,
It's on the bottom of the picture.
12 years
bottom
ago.
left. and it's a
Okay.
little-
British art. I hear the voice, but I don't see the video. With the Chapel Haven Schleifer Center, a residential program for neurodiverse individuals. Using the museum and its collections, the museum educators and the staff of Chapel Haven Schleifer Center developed a multifaceted course of observation and art making, which reinforced social skills such as listening, turn-taking, sustained attention, respect for others' ideas, compromising, and cooperation. Gallery seating was chosen in well-lit, out-of-the-way spaces on the 4th floor to avoid competing with other visitors and tour groups' noise levels. No-fail hands-on activities built confidence and camaraderie. To celebrate this long-standing collaboration, preparations began in February 2020 for neurodiverse students' creations of a public display composed of original paintings from the museum's permanent collection. 10 students served as curators, entrusted with the common goal of a public presentation, complete with an official opening in the gallery. The students were supplied with 8x10 colored images of paintings for museum storage, which were then displayed in a classroom where the group spent several sessions exploring personal responses as well as broader considerations.
And also 25.
25, what do we call this?
It's like that very bucolic scene of peaceful. I like that word.
Good word. So this is a painting of a musician, and I really like music. I was in my high school choir. I've been singing my whole entire life. Music has really helped me through a lot of stuff. And so when I saw the musician, it just immediately reminded me of myself.
Thanks, Berkeley. Why I chose this painting is that as much as I love the mandolin painting, how decorative it is, I've always had an affectionate spot for lined paintings. The way the is looking at the viewer, meaning you in this case, is very comforting, and it's definitely something I would have hanging up on my wall. Very simple background, left hand corner or backgrounds. Not a lot going on.
Today, as we celebrate the reopening of the center, we applaud the students' hard work and good-natured resilience. They have been role models for us all. Art museums have the unique role of being able to leverage art for its greatest possibilities for all of our visitors, Director Martin said. We hope this presentation reveals the significant impact of the Out to Art program and how art can enrich everyone. I would just like to. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. One sec. 12 years ago,
No.
Yale Center for British Art. I just wanted to relate one final anecdote, which to me just kind of says it all. We worked very hard with our staff by training people ahead of time, such as security folks, in terms of some of the physical needs that some of our visitors may have, that we had people from the Child Studies Center come in and talk about neurodivergent visitors, different kinds of abilities that different visitors had, because we wanted them to have some kind of knowledge of the background of these visitors. Everybody that was public facing of visitors were extremely outgoing and welcoming when, particularly whenever Chapel Haven came. They knew all the students' names. The students knew all of the security officers' names, and we would see people coming into the museum and just from Chapel Haven who might not have been residents of Chapel Haven, and they just came in and hung out. They sometimes just came and sat on the benches in the entrance court without even going up into the galleries. But they would come in, they would talk to the security officers, stay for half an hour, for an hour. And it was great because it meant that they really felt safe here and comfortable here. And one day, I was in the entrance court, and it was a Wednesday. And Thursday was Chapel Haven's day. And two of the residents of Chapel Haven came in together, and they put their hand up like this and to stop me. And they said to me, "We don't need you." And I said, "Oh, okay, that's great." And they said, "We learned how to take the city bus. We practiced because we wanted to come down to the museum on our own. And we wanted to go to different galleries that we picked. And we wanted to look at only pictures that. And furthermore, they said to me, and after the museum, we're going next door to Starbucks to get coffee. And I just teared up because it meant that what we were doing was working, and that they determined that they were going to learn how to use the city bus, and they decided where they wanted to go. All the decisions were made by them, what floors they wanted to go to, what pictures they wanted to see, and where they were going to go for coffee afterwards. So I'd like to end with that very positive note, and happy to listen to any comments, questions that people may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. That was great. I am not seeing any questions or comments right now.
Let me ask Linda, what challenges have come up in terms of doing this? Because I'm sure, I mean, you did a wonderful job, and this has just been a tremendous program. I've seen it develop over the years. But what were some of the challenges on all sides?
Thanks for that, Fred. Early on in the program, I had said that, and when I get calls after presentations, at museum meetings regionally and nationally about people calling and asking, I'd like to do this program at my museum. What does it take? It takes, first of all, administrative buy-in. They have to be supportive of this, and they have to want to help you make it happen, because it does involve security. It does involve other members of the staff. And what I have been working on, and what one of the challenges has been from the very beginning of trying to broaden our visitor demographics, is I had somebody on staff say to me, why would you even want to have those people have an exhibition of their own? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. And they said, well, who would come to see it? Who would even be interested in that? I was shocked. I was hurt. I was angry. But what it told me is that so many people have such a very limited experience with any group of divergent individuals, and how much and how far and how, the amount of work would have to be done. So having the top dog of wherever you work say, I think this is a great idea. Tell me what I need to do to help it get off the ground. So that's number one. Secondly, having the volunteer corps of docents that we do, who followed along, 2 or 3 of them during every class, who went to Chapel Haven or and taught, or during COVID, who taught virtually for the students. Having a group of individuals like that, as we are so lucky to have, also helps to facilitate doing these kinds of programs.
Mhm.
And I have to say that the director had said to me, we're going to have an opening for this exhibition by these paintings selected by this group, just like we would for any other exhibition. And we opened an hour earlier, and family and friends and so forth were invited, and we had over 100 people come for the opening. So I think it's those kinds of issues.
So we had a question asked, and it says, thank you for your work and for this presentation. Are there any provisions for neurodivergent visitors who are not organized? I mean, who come to the museum on their own or with their family?
Oh, I see. Thank you for that. It's a great question. On our website, we now have listed the different programs that we have, thanks to Fred. We have a weekend program for children on the autism spectrum, autistic kids from ages 5 to 12. So we do on our website advertise these programs to let the public know that we've been doing them for a long time. They're ongoing, and then have a separate page in terms of how to contact us if they are coming, so that we could be prepared and offer them one-on-one services, or if there were particular things that they wanted to look at or things for us to talk about with them. And we would have a conversation over the phone to talk about them, ask them to anything they wanted to share about the individuals that were coming, that we should know about them. Um, 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 and putting all that information together, we would design, a special opportunity to meet with them and take them through the museum like we would any other individuals who asked us to help them participate in the museum activities. Does that help?
That's great. And I think it speaks to how welcoming the British Museum has been to visitors of all kinds. And it's part of the original vision, I think, of having not just a Yale University facility, and it's used obviously for Yale classes and for Yale students. And I've been with Linda on a tour where she pointed out wonderfully interesting things that you wouldn't see in a regular museum. I can remember one little series of these little tiny cloud paintings. I think it was by, oh gosh, who was it Trump? No, Linda may remember, but and she asked, well, what are these little paintings for? And of course, you realize that back then there were no Polaroids, there was no cameras, and so the artist had to paint the clouds as he saw them. He had these little studies that he could then include, but it was fascinating, and you wouldn't necessarily see that in a non-university museum, which is part of what we bring with this to the community and vice versa, where people could come and bring their own interest and perspective. So it's mutually enriching, and I think it's a wonderful experience all around. I don't know if other people have questions. This has really been, I think, a model for work for neurodivergent students around the country. I don't know, Linda, how much you've had work with other museums or how much other museums have had an interest in this. It's been a very interesting experience, I think, here in New Haven, because, the stance at Yale used to be everybody stand off, stand off, stand off. Don't involve the community. And now we're very much in the community, and it's been a major sea change.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that one of the other ways in which both Chapel Haven's community has grown is that Tina Manchetti has organized art exhibitions of the students' work in various places on campus. So they have had exhibitions at Creative Arts Workshop in New Haven. They have had exhibitions at the Jewish Community Center in Woodbridge. And they are in preparation for another exhibition at a gallery in New Haven. The center is going to be sponsoring a symposium this coming October on neurodivergence and public spaces like art museums, where we will talk with architects, with designers, with engineers, public health individuals, in terms of how public spaces, cultural public spaces, theaters, and museums, art museums in particular, can be made more accommodating, and that all disabilities are not visible, and what we can do for individuals that may be in that category, and just trying to get, and myself, have learned so much from other museums that have terrific programs, and have had these kinds of programs for a very, very long time now as well. But the more, the better.
Well, this has just been fantastic. Any other questions or comments? I mean, this has been a win-win all around, I think, for both Yale and the British Museum, but also for the community and for the Chapel Haven community. I don't know if any of the Chapel Haven folks want to comment because they've been the beneficiaries of a lot of this experience and Linda's openness to working with students who are neurodivergent. Well, Linda, thank you very much. This has been a tremendous presentation, and I'm sure people may have some questions. Can they contact you directly if they
Please
do?
contact me at the Yale Center for British Art. I have a long spelling to my last name, so it's you can write it down. It's on my slide. Linda.friedlander@yale.edu. Thank you very much. Appreciate your attention and love to hear from anybody. And
Thank you again. Thank you. This has been great.
yeah, thanks to Eileen. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Hope to see you next month.